If you're a parent who feels like everything you do for your child feels heavy, not just hard, but heavy, this episode is for you. If it feels like your mind is constantly running in the background, thinking about therapies, accommodations, skills your child needs to learn, what you should be doing differently, and whether you're doing enough. If even the smallest daily tasks feel loaded with pressure and fear about your child's future, and if you sometimes wonder why parenting feels so much heavier for you than it seems for everyone else, I want you to know something right away. There is nothing wrong with you. What you're carrying is real, and it's not just emotional. It reflects how the nervous system responds when the heavy weight of responsibility is ongoing, uncertain, and intense, especially in the lived reality of parenting a PDA, autistic, or high needs child. In this episode, I'm going to help you understand why responsibility can feel so crushing in these circumstances. And just as importantly, how to begin carrying it in ways that feel lighter, safer, and more sustainable for your nervous system. So, if you've been living with this weight of responsibility for your child for a long time, stay with me. This conversation may help something in your body finally exhale. Let's begin. I remember when my son stopped going to school. He was 10 years old and supposed to start grade 4. The year before, he had experienced trauma at school, and the following year, the school placed him in an all-boys class, even though he had always felt safer with girls who were more predictable and gentler for him. He was also placed with a boy that he experienced as a bully and someone who always called him a crybaby. And this was a private school for children with additional needs. So on paper, it should have been supportive. But at the time, they didn't understand nervous system safety or how to work with anxiety in a trauma-informed way. And I tried everything I could to help my son acclimate. I went to school with him. The school occupational therapist worked with him. We adjusted, accommodated, and scaffolded as much as we could. But when I picked him up at the end of the day, something in him was gone. He looked frozen, almost catatonic, like he wasn't really there anymore. I could see that his nervous system was shutting down. The daily meltdowns trying to get him to school were escalating, and it became clear that forcing him through this environment was creating more trauma, not less. So I pulled him out of school. And in hindsight, I could see clearly that he was already in burnout. It was the right decision. And it was also the moment when a heavy, relentless weight settled into my body. So I had already felt responsible for my son for a long time. He had always needed more support than other children, and he was extremely demand avoidant, and he required a great deal of scaffolding just to function in daily life. But once he left school, the responsibility felt absolute. Suddenly, it felt like everything was on me. His learning, his development, his future, his ability to make friends, his milestones, his eventual independence. Underneath all of that was a deeply conditioned belief I hadn't fully recognized until then, that how he turned out would somehow be a reflection of me as a parent. This is where responsibility shifts. It's no longer just about care and guidance. It becomes infused with fear and pressure and conditioned meaning. Okay, responsibility stops feeling like something you do and starts feeling like something you carry all the time. Each day became this weight of responsibility, this constant mental scanning of what I needed to try next so that he could keep learning and developing. The weight of his future felt like it rested on me. My body teetered on the edge of overwhelm daily. It felt like if I don't figure this out, then who will? Okay, so when my son left school, he wanted nothing to do with learning. Okay, like at first we tried unschooling. We visited zoos and aquariums and science centers so that he could learn without pressure or demands. And for a while, this worked. But as his OCD worsened and his PDA went from more internalized expression to more externalized expression, and then hormones began to enter the picture, and even those gentle forms of learning became intolerable for him. Eventually, we entered a long stretch, nearly 6 years, where there was no formal schooling and very little visible learning. His mental health declined, the level of aggression and violence increased, and we tried medications in hopes of helping him feel better. And unfortunately, they didn't work well and caused side effects, including regression in his development. And there were periods when he was housebound, and he's been on and off housebound for years, and daily life became very small. So during that time, my seeming sense of responsibility narrowed dramatically, right? Like I no longer had to worry about academics or progress. But now I was focused on getting him to meet his basic needs, which became another huge weight, often filled with even more fear when he couldn't eat well or toilet well or sleep enough or practice much hygiene. And each day became about helping him survive the day. And although the pressure to learn and develop left the table, the weight I carried around his mental health only grew heavier. Okay. Fear was always there. How am I going to get him to do this? How will he ever function? What will his life look like? What does this mean about me as a parent? Okay, trying to get help from the outside, from doctors or therapists, didn't help and often made things worse. I would walk away from those calls feeling like I wasn't doing enough for my child and that I should somehow take on even more responsibility. So my body felt loaded and heavy. Fear of the future left me frozen and numb for many days, just trying to get through. I'm sure you can relate if you're in this position. It took me a long time to understand that the weight I was carrying wasn't just about circumstances. It was about how responsibility interacts with the nervous system and the brain's meaning making. Okay, so let's understand, why does this responsibility for our child feel so heavy, right? Like not just from a mind perspective, but it feels heavy in the body. Okay, so if responsibility feels heavy for you, it's not because you're weak and it's not because you're not resilient enough. It's because you're carrying a different kind of load, one that hits multiple layers of the nervous system all at once. So here are the reasons responsibility can feel so heavy when you're parenting a PDA, autistic, or high needs child. So number one, the load we carry is actually bigger than the norm. Okay, so the load is bigger. So all parents carry responsibility for their kids' well-being and development, right? And that's normal. But when your child has higher needs, you have to do more. You have to think about more. You have to adapt more. So it's not just parenting, okay? It's therapies, accommodations, school advocacy, regulation support, environmental tweaks, communication shifts, skill building, prevention, recovery, repairs, planning ahead, and constantly rethinking what will help. Your mind can become consumed by always thinking about how to help your child develop and function in the world, right? Okay, so for parents of neurotypical kids, development can often unfold in a more easeful way, right? Without having to consciously engineer and scaffold it and be on top of it. For parents of high needs kids, it can feel like development rests on you going the extra mile all the time. Okay, and that alone adds a huge weight. So number two reason why this feels so heavy is old mental models that are in our brain create this feeling of loss. Okay, so we all have these old mental models, and this is called conditioning. These are the mental models of what makes a successful parent and what makes a successful child. And many of us inherited a definition of success that looks like calm, compliant, obedient, social, responsible, doing well at school, meeting milestones, being kind, being able to take care of themselves, right? So our brains learned this is what it means to be safe, accepted, worthy, and successful in this world. So when our child can't fit those models, the brain doesn't just register difference, it registers loss. Okay, it registers danger. It registers this isn't how life is supposed to be. So if we don't update these mental models, we spend years fighting reality, never fully present, always trying to control outcomes, constantly feeling like we're failing and our child is failing too. And no wonder responsibility feels heavy when it's built on an outdated definition of what should be happening. Okay? We are raised on these neurotypical definitions of success and those old mental models. And when our brain doesn't see that happening in front of us, it's going to tell us that this is a loss. And then responsibility for helping your child not be a loss or helping you not feel that loss just feels heavier. Okay, number 3, why it all feels heavier is that you feel alone with it. Okay. The third reason responsibility feels so heavy is the feeling that you have to do this on your own. Okay? And why is that there, right? So parenting a high needs child can make you feel different from society, right? All of us feel it. You may not feel like you belong anymore. Depending on your child's challenges, you may have to pull them out of school. You may not be able to participate in things that other families can do easily, like play dates and social gatherings or family events, vacations, casual outings. And when you feel alone while carrying a huge responsibility, then that responsibility just gets heavier. And for many parents, this aloneness, this feeling of I'm all alone with this huge responsibility, it also pokes old wounds, okay? Memories of feeling alone earlier in life, which can compound the current situation that you're in. So it becomes not just that this is hard, this feeling of this is hard, but it's like I'm alone with this hard load and no one can help me. And this can lead to feelings of helplessness too, right? Which is usually always connected to childhood trauma. So, number 4 reason why responsibility can feel so heavy is because it feels inescapable. Okay. And this really changes everything when it gets to this point where it feels inescapable. So let me explain this. Okay. You feel this inescapability, right? This is your child. You can't escape it. It's your child. And you feel like you don't have a choice and you have to do these things for your child. But when you feel this inescapability and that you have no choice and that you have to do it, this is the clincher for trauma encoding. And when your nervous system neurocepts, right, when it feels that you are trapped with no way out and no real options, it will drop you into the dorsal vagal shutdown system where you feel numb, collapse, disconnection, and despair. And when responsibility feels never ending, that's another thing that adds to this trauma load feeling, right? Your system doesn't experience it as this temporary season or challenge. It experiences like it's a life sentence. Okay? So that never-ending feeling, oh, this is never ending, that is part of the trauma vortex. And when you feel that way, you're living in the trauma vortex, right? So this feeling like it's inescapable is a big one that can lead us down the road to burnout. Number 5 reason why it feels so heavy is that the fear is constant and ongoing. Okay. So this 5th reason is that the fear that gets triggered, right? It's always this fear of your child's future, fear of what will happen if they don't develop skills, fear of whether they'll be okay in the world. And for many parents of PDA and high needs kids, fear isn't occasional. It's the constant background noise you're living with. Okay. And when we live with ongoing fear, we burn massive amounts of energy because it's this low-grade sympathetic fight flight going on all the time. You feel like you're being chased by the tiger, right? We don't feel safe unless our child fits the mold that our brain believes equals safety and acceptance in the world. And then the fear constantly gets triggered. And then fear makes responsibility heavy because it turns every decision into a high stakes emergency, right? We always feel like we're being chased by the tiger. That's our animal system that we carry, okay? So fear is a big one to work with. And then number 6 of why this feels so heavy, all this responsibility, is because there is grief, and that adds weight, okay? So grief is often heavy and often unspoken, right? But the thing is that we have a brain that's going to neurocept loss, right? And we're going to feel this loss, okay, with all these emotions of grief. There's this loss of ease, loss of imagined timelines, right? Loss of community, loss of the parenting experience you thought you'd have. And it is so natural for grief to come up. But the challenge is most of us don't acknowledge it. And so then it cannot be metabolized and released from the body. And the problem is that it doesn't disappear, okay? It sits in the body and then it adds weight to all of the responsibility, okay? So important to process the grief. So, number 7, why it feels so heavy is that there aren't clear reward loops. Okay, this is a big one of the way our human system is designed. Okay, you often don't see rewards for your efforts in the short term, right? So, and it can take years of pouring energy and nervous system resources into your child, right? There are constant ups and downs. You think you see progress, and then it looks like it's regression. Okay. And the thing is that your brain, all of our brains, create the loop of effort and then reward, effort and then reward. And then that motivates us, right? The loop creates dopamine and makes the hard work feel worth it. Okay. But when effort doesn't reliably create visible reward, then your brain concludes, I'm not doing enough, right? Cue feeling like you're failing. So, and even when you are doing far most than most parents, responsibility then becomes loaded with negativity and feeling like you're somehow failing. Okay. And no wonder it feels heavy. Okay. So those are the 7 reasons of why responsibility can feel so heavy. Now let's get into how to make responsibility feel lighter and not like a life sentence, okay? Because right now, most of us feel like it's a life sentence, right? And the goal isn't to pretend that the load isn't real, right? The load is real. There's a lot there, right? The goal is to change our relationship to the load and to change the felt sense of carrying it so that responsibility is no longer fused with panic, shame, entrapment, and hopelessness, or even the heaviness. Okay, we want to change our relationship to responsibility, and we want to change the meanings behind it. And you can do this, okay? So there's a lot of hope in this. You can do this. So here are the shifts that help. Okay, number 1, self-compassion for the greater load and taking the micro breaks. Okay, so we need to start by acknowledging the truth, right? We don't want to gaslight ourselves and say, oh, like I'm not carrying this load. You are. There's a lot more that you are doing than most parents ever have to do. So let's start by acknowledging the truth that you are carrying more. Okay, and that is the truth. And then we can bring in self-compassion. And this is where self-compassion matters here, not as a nice idea, but as nervous system medicine. Like to me, like self-compassion for all parents of high needs kids is non-negotiable. It is so important to develop this very important nervous system regulating tool. Okay. It helps when you find yourself thinking like, why do I have to do so much more than other parents? It's not fair. It's exhausting. Okay. And in addition, many parents I work with are so hard on themselves, always feeling like they are not doing enough for their child, feeling like somehow they need to be even more responsible than they already are. Why do we do this to ourselves? So listen, compassion doesn't remove the load, okay, but it reduces the added layer of self-attack. And alongside compassion, then can you give yourself some little breaks? Small ones, real ones, because the nervous system can't carry a heavy load without moments of downshifting. The nervous system needs moments of rest so it can repair, regenerate, and keep going. Okay? So, how can you allow yourself a break from the responsibilities when you can? And I know for some of us, it's very hard to get a break from the responsibilities. But even if you could just take a break from thinking about them, can you give yourself a break from thinking about them when you're not actually in the responsibility? Okay. And give yourself a self-compassion break instead. So repattern this, okay? Repattern from always thinking about, oh, I have all this responsibility and all the worries. Interrupt that. Give yourself a self-compassion break, right? Put your hand on your heart and just say to yourself, I'm not alone. Many parents feel this way too, and I can support myself through this. It's okay that I feel this way. Okay, so validate yourself and give yourself a self-compassion break because it is very regulating. And then the second part of this is building the felt sense of I am strong enough, right? What if I'm strong enough to handle all of this? Okay. And it's not through forcing positivity, but through helping your body know again and again that you can handle hard things and still remain here. And that's where self-compassion can really help support yourself to handle the hard things. Okay. So that's number one, right? Really acknowledging the truth that you are carrying more, giving yourself self-compassion and breaks where possible. The number two of helping yourself to lessen the load is updating your mental models, right? And letting safety lead. Okay, so this is one of the biggest shifts. Okay, acknowledging that your child is different, has different needs, and is on a different path. Okay, many of us understand this cognitively in our heads, but that we have these deeper conditioning and mental models in our subconscious mind running the show. Okay, so we want to really update our mental models and live into them more and help our brain orient to those mental models over and over again, right? So can we update the internal model so that your brain stops trying to force a high needs child into an old definition of success based on neurotypical norms? That is the key shift, okay? For a high needs child, success often looks like nervous system safety and support first, from which then comes capacity and ability to develop and do more. But this is the big caveat within this, but it is on their own developmental timeline. And we need to really, really take that in. So can we let go of attachment to having immediate outcomes for our efforts? Okay, your brain will want the immediate outcome because that's how our brains are designed. But you are not your brain. You are the awareness of your brain, and you can choose a different way of seeing things. Okay, so development can happen on a different timeline and in a different way. And when you let nervous system safety lead and allow a different timeline, you take the pressure off of both of you. It's like a big relief. When I stepped into this, it was such a huge relief. Okay, we're allowed to be different. We're allowed to have a different timeline, and we're allowed to have our own journey. We don't have to match the mental model that my brain told me is success. Woo! That's freeing. Okay. This doesn't mean you stop supporting your child. It really means that you stop measuring worth and success by whether results show up quickly and whether results match neurotypical norms. Okay, so number three of lessening the load is build a tribe so you're not carrying it alone, okay? And this is not an easy one to do. It's not an easy one to do depending on where you live and how much time you have on your hands, and if you have understanding people around you in your community, and if not, then build it online, right? Because humans are not meant to carry heavy responsibility alone, okay? Research study after research study shows that, like, when you're in community and you have healthy relationships with others and you feel like you're supported, you have better health, mental health, and physical health outcomes in life. Okay. So creating a tribe can mean community, friendships, even a therapist or a support group, or any place where you feel understood and where your child can belong to. Okay, so many of the parents I work with inside my course, the Regulation Rebuild, feel like they have finally found a community where they belong. And this warms my heart because this is something that I wanted for so long and I couldn't find, right? And this helps them so much to lighten the load, okay? When you feel like you belong, the burden is lighter. And for some of us, feeling all alone didn't start with our kids, but often came from a childhood experience where it became a wound that we felt alone, we felt different in some way, we felt like we didn't belong in some way, right? And now this sits in your system getting triggered by your current circumstances. So it's important to reflect on this so that you can separate past from present, right? And perhaps this is worth working with this wound in therapy so that it doesn't compound the present situation of that aloneness feeling. Okay, number 4 is to create a felt sense of choice and purpose. Okay, this is so important. Okay, because when you feel no choice, remember, you are going to feel trapped and stuck and hopeless and in despair and in code trauma. Okay. So even when you truly have to do a lot, right? Like we truly have to do a lot, our nervous system still feel like we have choice in the matter and it's not an I have to do it. Okay. It can feel like you have no choice but to do all of this. But reframing it into I'm choosing this can change everything. Okay. So choice brings agency and agency brings regulation. Choice is one of the necessary things for the nervous system to feel safe. And choice becomes more sustainable when you connect it to meaning and purpose. Okay. So when something is hard but purposeful, we can endure it far more easily. Okay. Purpose doesn't have to be only about your child, it can include you too. Okay. For me, when things feel hard and the responsibility feels heavy, I return to my purpose. I am learning who I truly am underneath survival based conditioning. I am learning to be in my power inside what challenges me. Okay. And this is deeply rewarding to know that I'm learning and growing from this challenge and that there is purpose to this pain, right? It's not all for nothing. And then I also imagine my son as an adult looking back and appreciating what I did for him. And even now, I see the fruits of my labor showing up in ways that I never expected. As my son is turning the corner now, he's doing so much better. And and he does thank me for things. And it just feels like, it feels like all those hard years where I thought there was no progress is like, now I'm seeing that there is. Okay, so number 5, work with fear. Okay, and let safety be there too. Okay, so this is so important because fear will always arise on this journey. And the goal isn't to eliminate it, the goal is to help your body hold fear and see that there is safety here at the same time. Okay, we want to have containment for our fear, we want to help it feel safe. So fear of your child's future may always come up, right? Because like that's how our brains are designed, and this is how we're always going to feel with our kids. Okay, it's always going to come up. But can you also let trust be there too? Okay, can regulation be there too? Can you learn to tolerate fear without being taken over by it? So this is where nervous system work matters, right? Um, Staying in the present by orienting and grounding and resourcing yourself and co-regulation and reminding your system, okay, fear is here and I am still safe enough in this moment. Okay. And also that today's situation does not predict the future. Anything is possible in the future. Okay, so that line helps me to orient my brain to future possibilities instead of future demise. So that's really important too. Okay, so number 6 of how to help this responsibility not feel so heavy is process the grief that comes up so that it can move and leave the body. Okay, otherwise, grief adds weight when it stays stuck in the body and it keeps the nervous system stuck. Okay, so acknowledge the way your brain registers loss. Okay, let it be unfair, let it be painful, validate it, and then let the grief unload through tears, through somatic practices, therapy, supportive witnessing, or gentle grieving rituals. Whatever it takes, let that grief move. Okay. And when grief moves, you don't necessarily feel like so happy all of a sudden for your whole life, but you do feel lighter. And from that place, you can access then, how would I rather hold this? How do I want to show up inside this reality, right? And start making those shifts and changes because the nervous system can now move forward. Okay, number 7 is to orient to glimmers so that your brain gets that reward signal. Okay. This is so important. Okay. We want to orient to glimmers, right? Uh, Not only to like progress or milestones, but to present moment rewards, which I'm calling glimmers, like little moments of that you can appreciate and take in, okay, are called a glimmer that you can really feel in your body. And this can be things like, what do you love about your child, right? Looking at what you love about your child, even the smallest things like their soft cheeks or their hands, the way your child gets excited about something, the TV shows they love, the tiny moment of connection, the sparkle in their eyes, the funny comment, the moment they let you in. Okay, it's so important to get our brain to orient to these tiny little glimmers because they matter because they give your brain reward loops in the present. Okay, they tell your nervous system there is goodness here too. And when your nervous system receives those small rewards, then it has more capacity to keep going without needing constant proof that everything is improving. Okay, so if everything you do for your child feels heavy right now, there is nothing wrong with you, okay? You are likely carrying more uncertainty, more emotional labor, and more nervous system load than most parents ever have to carry. And you are doing it with care and devotion, even when it doesn't feel like enough. Okay, responsibility does not disappear on this path. It's gonna be there for a long time to come, but it doesn't have to feel like a life sentence. Okay, staying present with what is while still holding hope for a better future is no easy task, but it leads to deep learning and growth and the realization that you are far stronger than you ever knew. And when you begin to feel that strength and a deeper sense of purpose in carrying this load, something paradoxical happens. The load softens because you're no longer carrying it through the same lens. So if this podcast helped you, please comment, please share. I'm sure other parents need to hear this message too. Thank you.